Hi YouTube. So I have a plant obsession, but the way that my plant obsession came about was I was under a lot of stress with 3 kids, and I have 2 businesses. I'm in skincare. I've been an esthetician for 17 years. And this year I started doing a lot more gardening, and it really lowered my stress. So I collect rare indoor house plants and some common ones too, but it really de-stresses me to propagate and plant and take care of my plants. So today we're talking about the Albo Monstera Deliciosa, and I will write below the full name. I don't want to botch it. And Monsteras are my favorite plant, so we're going to go over to our station here. And I need to build moss poles for these guys. And Piper, my daughter, is going to help me.
Hello.
So it's a family DIY project. What do you think about plants, Piper?
They're pretty cool.
You've got some in your room, right?
Yeah.
And we grew some babies. So these are our green Monsteras. And we have a big one in the living room that we built, a nice big moss pole. This one's starting to get fenestrations, so it's really exciting. And we also took an old Monstera that was really sad, and we made several babies, and there's a new leaf popping out of this one. So I made some 2-leaf and 1-leaf propagations, and I'm planning with this Albo to do the same. And then I'm going to keep my other Albo, which has almost perfect leaves, which is unbelievable because it's really hard to find. So Monsteras need to climb to grow more quickly and to grow to their fullest potential with fenestrations. So today we're going to build a moss pole. I've already replanted my Albos, but I'll make a video on what I use to plant my Monsteras. It's a little unconventional, but these are hardy plants. They just need a lot of drainage. So this is the pole that we're going to use. So here's a problem I found, YouTube. If you don't have a pole that doesn't grow fungus, it can rot the roots, and that's something I'm not interested in with the Albos. They're very, very expensive and they're hard to find. These have 8 or 9 leaves, which is almost impossible to find. Thank you, Plant Hall, for giving me these Albos. I had to have them sent, which is always risky business, but it's impossible to find them locally. So this is the butterfly for the top of the moss pole. This is a burlap roll. So at your hardware store, they have these burlap rolls. They're not that expensive and you get a lot. So you can make a lot of moss poles. And this is just a bag from EB Stone, green moss. There's a few mosses you could use. And this is garden tape. So this is to help train your plant to go on the moss pole. Twine and scissors, of course. So this is just my decoration for the end. You know what I don't have? Piper, will you go and get our zip ties? They should be in there. If you can't find them, I will help you. So we're gonna get started here. They're in the lower cabinet in there. So zip ties, I actually like to zip tie my moss pole. So because this is an Albo and it's a Borsigiana, which is a mini Monstera, not in the full sense like the Tetrasperma, but the Philodendron Tetrasperma is like nicknamed the mini Monstera. But these are a mini form of Monstera. So if you want a variegated, thank you, zip ties. I forgot, the zip ties are really good to get everything in place. Twine, you can wrap and wrap and wrap, but I like to wrap with the twine and make my moss poles look pretty with the twine. I like to, you know, fasten everything in place with my zip ties. Okay, I'm gonna point this down. This may kind of cut off my head a little bit, but you can see Piper. It's like, look down there like a little frog, right?
Yes.
Much cuter than a frog. Okay, Piper, why don't you come right here and you can help me pack the moss. So we're gonna pull the moss out, and we have this blue mat, if you guys notice. So in my industry, we have something called a wax mat. I actually carry it on my skincare site, Jess's Skincare, and I'm gonna put them on my, I have an Etsy store where I'm gonna start propagating some of these plants. And, you know, I'm not gonna have a lot. This is like, I'm a collector and a hobbyist, but whatever I have that I'm talking about in video, I will spread the love and I will put them in Etsy because I like to propagate. I have a whole lot more plants. Does it smell like wood?
It smells like nature.
It does.
Moss. Like,
It is. It's so mossy. So we're breaking off pieces of moss, but we're also kind of leaving it clumpy. Now, what we want to do is make sure that this moss pole is really tall, because the Monstera is going to grow up the moss pole.
cool.
So we've got to go all the way down here, like as low, as long as this burlap will let us. You can also cut another piece of burlap, and the burlap, it really lets the roots, it's perfect for Monstera roots because these holes are really big, so the roots, the size of the roots are like perfect. So you don't have this moss that's flying around that's just tied in twine. And these moss poles are really kind of expensive online. You can get a pole for a buck or two, like the plastic poles. You'll find them in the garden section at the hardware store. And they're really cheap. And then you just buy the burlap and the moss, and you got something a lot cheaper than 10 bucks and a lot prettier. So we're gonna see if this is enough moss. You really wanna, when you're just using one pole, you wanna kind of put the pole in the middle of this. So what I'm doing is tucking the moss around the pole, and I'm kind of feeling if there's any areas that don't have enough moss. So this is Piper and I's first DIY together.
I thought the poles were just this twine.
Oh my gosh, we totally forgot. So we're starting a little business as a hobby business called Indoor Planty, and there's a story behind that. We have a fiddle leaf fig. It's okay, you make a mess and you just sweep it up at the end. So a lot of our mess stays on our little, I always do this in my kitchen on my cutting block because there's so much light in here. And we'll hurry up here and get this moss pole so we can start wrapping it. Okay, hold that there, Piper. Thank you. So we folded the end over like a burrito. Let's make sure, oh yeah, you can see that. Fold the end over like a burrito.
You make it into a burrito.
You make it a moss pole burrito.
It's like, it's
not very delicious, but
it smells good.
it's delicious to the Monstera. The Monstera is going to attach to this, and you're going to want to, that's right, it's going to like become part of the Monstera.
It's a plant burrito.
So we're trying to get this tight, but here's the problem. You need to get, and you can see the mess, this goes right through the burlap. You know what? You guys need a plant, you need a plant mat like I have, and you need a planting tray. So you're gonna catch a lot of your mess but you're not gonna catch all of it. I just sweep it up or vacuum at the end. Planting is messy business. Okay, hold the end. So now we're gonna make sure
Bunch it together.
that this is really tight. Hold all that in there, Piper. So we're trying to make a nice, thick, juicy moss pole for the Monstera to eat. And Piper was, look out, Piper. Try not, there we go. You can come over here, honey.
Okay.
Just come around here. Piper's first video, so she's kind of learning
Hello.
how to do
Oh,
this.
what?
Right there. There you go. You want to get the scissors?
Yeah. Right here. Do you cut this or?
No. You cut, first you cut lengthwise, so without cutting the mat, which this mat's pretty tough, but lift it up, cut there, and cut all the way down like wrapping paper. So one of my albos that's extremely healthy, it's got a lot of aerial roots, so it wants to climb.
Let me go down here.
And great job, Piper. So because there's a little bit left, we're gonna actually roll until all of that is underneath. And you kind of pay attention before you start zip tying. So I like to zip tie it 3 times and I do a weaving pattern, you know. This is gonna be a little hard for you guys to see. So I figured out this way where you weave it through. So I'm going through the outside, it's kind of like sewing. I'm coming around the end. Oh, you know what? I forgot. So first you have to pull this all the way to the end and wrap the end. So you're doing a loop, then you go around to the other side. You do another loop around the other end, and this goes right through the burlap. The burlap, if you wrap it thick enough, if you wrap it too thin, your moss is gonna fall out really easily. Okay, and then you make this the back of your moss pole. So when you're threading these, oops, and sometimes if your twisty tie ends up backwards, just twist this end around so that you can lock it. Okay, and this does a really good job of securing everything, and then what we're going to do later is we'll wrap this in twine.
Make sure the moss stays in.
The moss won't stay in until you kind of wrap it up, you know what I mean? Careful, because we don't want it to unwind. So she was squishing it, hoping to tighten it, but we don't want it to unwind. So it took me a minute. I put one at the top, twisty tie. So you go around, wrap it, start the same way. Okay, and you're gonna go through this end. Make sure you get all the way around the pole, but this doesn't have to be precise. You can just wrap your whole pole in twine. Wrap. Whoops. So make sure your zip ties are long enough. I'm having trouble holding this and tying it. Piper, you want to help?
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes I accidentally put these backwards. So you have to twist this around, stick this through, and then tighten it down. And then in the front, it kind of looks like this. It's really the cleanest, most secure way. I figured out how to do this. And if you wrap it with enough, and then, you know, these loose pieces are going to get a little bit of twine, but they're not going to rely 100% on twine. You will know that you always have the zip ties securing everything. So the bottom is a little bit different. The bottom, you want to make sure it's really tight, like it's wrapped around like a tied up balloon. So you want to bunch the burlap at the bottom and then secure it really, really well with your twisty tie. And this one's actually going to hold everything in and make sure. So you might weave this through and around a couple times so that it actually keeps the bottom completely shut. So this is where a whole bunch of your moss will fall out if you're not careful. Piper's over there in the forest of Monstera. What do you think about those albos? Did you know how special they were?
No.
Sorry, see my little end is not popping out for some reason. So you have to really turn these and shove them through there so they pop out somewhere. And they're kind of stiff. So now with twine, if you rely on a lot of twine, whoa, that went really high. So this should be wrapped up at the bottom so that the moss doesn't fall out, or you'll be sorry if it's falling out everywhere. So we're going to wrap it one more time, but I have to do this with it put down because when I try to hold it up to the camera and do it one-handed, I'm not having success. So okay, so we have an obvious front and back, and I'll show you that really quick. You want to cut the zip tie as close to the connector area as you can. I don't actually know what that's called. The connector thing that you zip the tie through. This is the front. You see these are kind of nice little joints with no bracket. And then this is the back. So you tuck that on the back side of your plant. Not that that's that ugly, but you're actually going to wrap those in twine to make this whole thing look like a twine pole. So you can start at the bottom or the top. When you're tying on the first piece, if you want to tie it on the bottom to act like an extra little holder for the moss, that's a good idea. You know, like a little tourniquet that's above the tourniquet. So I'm going to tie this on both sides and not on both sides. And then I'm going to start wrapping. I'm going to cut the little end that's left over so that doesn't show. Piper, can you undo the twine? So hold the twine, hold this, and when I'm wrapping it, just let out more. So what I did before, which seems to be much faster, is you just take it like this and you turn it. If you try to go around the end like I was trying to initially, because I forgot, it's not going to go as smooth. So this is where any loose spots, you have to tighten those spots down, like tighten up the little burrito. So I went around the end on that one because I'm actually going up kind of like a candy cane stripe. But you can roll it like this. So rolling works. I was just trying to tighten this one spot, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So around these joints where the zip ties are, I personally think without the zip ties or without tying some twine at the top, bottom, and middle, that you'll have a hard time holding the burlap together to get it all wrapped, you know, when you initially get started. And you do have to tighten the little areas in between before you wrap or before you twist around. So you just pull it tight and twirl. And I've made a few of these based off of some tutorials I watched, but this is my own spin on it. I did not use bamboo because I think that it's going to cause fungus sometimes. Maybe not if you keep a close eye on it. But I recently grew baby orchids in a jar, and there was a stick in there to hold up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. There's a stick in there, which is an orchid stake, to hold up the plastic to create, oh, don't blow that, please. If you blow, this will go all over the floor. So it went all over me. Are you decorating me with moss?
Yes.
By accident?
Yeah.
It's okay. You gotta have fun, you know, when you're doing this. So this has an imperfect spot right here that's kind of puffed out. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull that down and do another wrap. And I'm gonna cross over. You don't have to do this, but if you have some imperfect spots, you might have to do this. Meaning some of the burlap is kind of like sticking out. You want to tighten this down so the whole thing looks symmetrical. And then we went all the way back down to the bottom. And now we're going to do a tie off again. So I like to do a sewing knot. So that's where you cross your knot under the rope and then pull the end of the string through. And you do that a couple times wherever you're ending. Or you could leave that little piece of string that I cut off and tie those two together once you wrap your way back down to the end. It's really not that complicated. If you have other cool knots that you make, you can use those. Okay, so now we're gonna see, I already see a potential problem with our moss pole, but there's a way we can fix that. I think our moss pole, because my other Monsteras were really big, so what I'm gonna do is be creative here. So if you end up with the wrong size, that's not the one I want to put a pole on. So if you want to dust up, this is what Piper was trying to clean up, but she wasn't sure how, so she was blowing it.
I guess it was fun.
Okay, so we're making a little pile of the mess there. Thanks, Piper.
You're welcome.
And we're gonna just take a little piece of burlap and cover up whatever comes out the top. So these aren't that complicated. So we're gonna see how close we can get you now.
Closer.
Closer, zoom in. I do a lot of my own filming. I've done this for many years. I have a channel for estheticians called Jessa Esthetician. What do you think about that, Piper? So I just repotted this Monstera. Oh my gosh. We have so much pole coming out the top, it's not even funny.
Tell me.
So this part, I want you guys to watch very carefully. You have to be really, really careful when you're putting these roots in. These aerial roots are like gold. If you break an aerial root, your plant will recover. But I have some roots, like this one is really long, and this is going to go right through the burlap, just like, but you have to be gentle because you're gonna have to wiggle this. There we go. Go right in there, baby. So you're gonna tuck these roots into the burlap, and then the next time you water it, or when you're done, if you want to spray the burlap sack down, you can. So this Monstera, I'm not planning on propagating. That's why I want it to climb and get really big and be like a giant European elbow. Okay. You know those giant European elbows that we all want that you can't find in the United States? Okay. So back we go. I'm sorry that this first video is kind of long. So now we have a ginormous moss pole for the little Monstera. So let's just get another close-up of these roots are tucked in. See, that big root, there was one, it's this one. There's one that's really big. I hope you guys can see that. This one. And this one's tucked way in the burlap. So I really like burlap, especially if they have some aerial roots, you know, some nice sized aerial roots, because that's what they want to do. They want to attach to a tree and climb. All right. So that's about it for the moss pole. My moss pole has a big green pole coming out at the top. All you have to do is wrap more burlap with twine. You don't really need the zip ties if you have extra and you didn't make it long enough. This pole is so extra large that the burlap, the length that it came in, is not long enough. So you just put more moss, cut a short piece, and burrito the top, just like you did the rest of it. Have a good night. So follow us on Instagram, Indoor Planty, subscribe to our YouTube, and hit the bell notifications. And we might be starting something on Facebook. We haven't yet. We're mainly on Instagram, Etsy. We do have indoorplanty.com, which goes to our Etsy store, but there's not very much in there right now. Some Addisoni, but there'll be more because I'm propagating. All right. We love you. Bye, YouTubers. Plant people.